Hello, today's technique is one that students find psychologically really difficult, and it is the need to redraft your writing. Um, well, I've got a solution for you. If you can't face redrafting your own writing, redraft someone else's. Find someone else who hopefully is better than you. So last week I released a video. I'll show a copy of it to you now. If you search my channel, this is the one to look for, how to write a dual narrative story with a grade 9 model answer. And if you haven't watched that yet, it was written by a teacher in my school in the mocks. She sat the mocks with the students. That's how good she was. And she did something that I didn't think I could do. She managed to write a dual narrative story in that time, 40 minutes in the exam. And I'm going to show you how to improve it, even though other teachers in my school marked it and graded it as a grade 9. So the task was to write a story about a game that goes badly wrong. My version is always in bold at the bottom. The scarf, although blood-stained now, still smelt of the young girl's sweet scent. Sauntering down the dark midnight streets, he slipped the scarf calmly beneath his jacket zip. He contemplated disposing of his slim steel blade, but the trusty tool had served him excellently again. Well, let's look at the things that I've left out. She had him walking towards the dilapidated building. This is what I call telling rather than showing. We didn't need to know he was moving towards that dilapidated building unless that was going to be important to the story, and it isn't. But it is there because it's got this brilliant use of alliteration, dilapidated, the D in building, the deposited, but that's not really needed. He also gets rid of the scarf here, but the scarf is going to be important later on in the story, and so I've decided he should keep it as a memento. It makes more sense for him to keep onto it. Pocketing it safely instead, well, I've done that more economically with him slipping the scarf beneath his jacket zip. I don't need to know that he reminisced gloriously about the previous times he had used it. I've just shown that with the word again. He's committed this crime before, and the word excellently here already tells us that he approves of those previous actions. That is showing, this is telling, and it's really there again to show, oh look, I'm using another adverb. And as I've shown you in previous videos, get rid of adverbs, you very rarely need them. Okay, next. A pure adrenaline rush overwhelmed him with the surge of electrifying power he felt after each encounter, like first love. So we've got a much longer version here. Let's look at why I've left some stuff out. The adrenaline rush he received after each use was addictive. Well, that again is telling. I know it's addictive because he feels it all the time after each encounter, so I don't really need to spell that out. This simile, more addictive than a line of premium quality cocaine, is a good one if you're going to make sure that he is attracted to drug use, but he isn't in this story. I've got an adrenaline rush. Do I need the cocaine as well? I didn't think so. It's overselling it. He could still smell the aromatic scent of blood wafting from his previous victim. I could have possibly had something about the aromatic scent of blood, but that to me was suggestive of romance, aromatic. Like first love is what I had as a substitute for that. Possibly I should go back, on reflection, and I'd have something about aromatic scents, but I don't need to know that it's wafting. That's a description too far. It's telling us too much, and it doesn't make sense to be coming from his previous victim, because that confuses us, and it doesn't feature again in the story. Focusing on just one victim at a time helps us picture the scene more clearly. His mind strobed ecstatic images, a magic lantern in his skull. He found himself at the door. Inside he collected his scant belongings. She would be found in a few hours, and by then he would be long gone. So, what have I got rid of? As the wondrous memories ran through his brain like a high-speed train. Well, it's not a bad simile, but it is a bit of a cliche. And the problem with it is a high-speed train would damage him. But actually, that's not what's going on in this story. He's damaging other people, and he gets away scot-free. So the simile doesn't work with the story. I wanted to carry the idea of the images in his brain, and so I called the images ecstatic and decided that they would strobe through his brain as he watched them. And I like the idea of the magic lantern, that old Victorian way of looking at pictures. Victorian works because we associate this kind of killing with Jack the Ripper, Victorian figure. And I've included the detail of in his skull rather than his head or his brain because of the associations with death. So I just thought that was neater. Here I've got rid of him opening the door furtively. Well, one, I don't like adverbs unless they really serve a purpose. Here this adverb really doesn't serve a purpose because his confidence here, she would be found in a few hours, and by then he would be long gone. So he's confident that he's going to get away, and therefore there's no need for him to open the door furtively. It just doesn't work with his psychological state. He's completely confident, and so I've kept it here with confidence. The other thing that happens here is all my sentences are rather direct and short that reflect his confidence, and by adding in these extra bits of information, you take the impact of that confidence away. The next paragraph's a really good one. Go and see that video I showed you if you want to see why it's so good, but I'm just going to read it unchanged. The squeals and shouts of the fairgoers permeated the balmy evening. It was Rosie's 13th birthday, and the first day of the summer holidays. 6 long weeks of glorious freedom stretched interminably out in front of her. For the first time, her parents had let her out on her own, at night with her mates, and she was having such a fun time. Admittedly, the fun had been helped by the large bottle of vodka her friends had persuaded her to steal from the parents' cabinet. I'll just change that. And likewise, the next paragraph remains unchanged. Taking a quick swig of the vodka, Rosie felt a warm, fuzzy feeling suffusing through her body after the warm, tantalizing liquid had trickled down her throat. Giggling, she passed the bottle on to her friends and joined them in the long, serpentine queue for the waltzers. He was prowling through the fields behind the fair when the fizzing lights and childish laughter drew him in, like a lurid penny dreadful. The air was rich with pungent spice and the intoxicating smell of diesel oil and brandy snap. Warm and sugared fear coated the children's faces as their feigned screams splintered the crackling air. So I haven't changed much here, but I've got a simile again here, which is a good simile, like a moth entranced by lurid light. I've kept lurid because it's such a dramatic word. But again, the simile doesn't quite work because a moth attracted to light gets killed, and that doesn't work with our killer here. He is the one doing the killing. So it doesn't quite work. So I've changed it to like a lurid penny dreadful. This is a really good technique. It's an allusion. So good readers will know what a penny dreadful is. It was the kind of short novella that was printed in Victorian times. It only cost a penny, and it was full of crime and real murder, and that's why it's called a penny dreadful. And that links us back to that kind of Jack the Ripper era that I mentioned earlier. And it also fits with this use of the word lurid. So I'm really pleased with that change. And now I've got rid of this, and I'm less confident about this one. So the children's faces with feigned screams splintered through the air like exploding dynamite. Well, that's very good. I really like it, but dynamite damages everybody. And so that also didn't quite work. So I've changed it to the screen splintered the crackling air. And we've got the sense of nature here, the air itself, becoming more hostile as he approaches. And so there's an element of nature disapproving of the killer, and it just creates an air of danger. I'm not totally convinced that that's better, um, but there you go. I've done that, and it gives me the alliteration of the C's, which just sounds harsher, but that's a personal choice. Suddenly he saw her, the young girl from Whitcross Road. He had spent weeks now heading down the street, hoping to catch a glimpse of her silken alabaster skin through the half-closed curtains of her bedroom window. Now he couldn't believe his sheer good luck. She was quite clearly inebriated, stumbling over her smudged innocence, shrieking with abandon. So what have I changed? Moving closer towards the rides. I don't like verbs which are there uh, passively, how is he moving closer? It doesn't really tell us, so there's no drama to it. And do we need to know that it's towards the rides? No, the most important thing is that he sees her. So I get to the action straight away. Suddenly he saw her. Then we've got the ending of the paragraph, and this was clearly the opportunity he had been waiting for. Well, that is the exact example of telling rather than showing. So I've changed it quite a bit. She's stumbling over her smudged innocence. I like abstract metaphor. Um, so she's innocent, but she's stumbling over it because she's drunk. She's not used to being drunk. And the innocence itself is smudged, it's damaged. Well, partly that's because she's got drunk, partly because she's stolen the money from her parents, and partly it's because she's about to be killed. And I've got in the back of my mind here, a smudge is when you wipe something out, and that's what's going to happen to her. Her life is going to be wiped out. Um, and I'm also a fan, as you know, of contrast. So she's shrieking with abandon, complete freedom, at the very moment when he's about to find her and kill her. And I always like to play with contrast because I think the best writers do that all the time. The waltzers had made Rosie queasy, and her white porcelain skin had turned a putrid shade. Stumbling off the ride, Rosie became the first victim for a game of hide and seek. While her whole world was still spinning furiously from the ride, her friends tied her oversized scarf around her eyes, spun her again, and ran off squealing, shouting, "Count to 20, then find us if you can." So what have I changed here? Well, this detail, although excellent fun at the time, again is telling us, but we already know that. Um, so it's superfluous detail. Rosie felt extremely queasy. Well, queasy is already ill, isn't it? It's already feeling extremely ill, so we don't need it. It's there to give us another adverb, and so I've got rid of it. And the ride breathlessly, another adverb chucked in. Well, can we infer that she's breathless? Yes, because she's queasy. She stumbled off the ride. Being breathless is no surprise. And so it's not important to the story. Got rid of it. Although her whole world um, is a really good connective to use if you want to show that the friends are being cruel and realize that she's in a really bad way and blindfold her anyway. But there isn't any suggestion later in the story that she wants to show this, so I got rid of it and instead had while. And the effect of that is to say that this is happening while she's still feeling sick, and therefore we can infer things are going to get even worse. Rosie never found her friends. Before she had even counted to 5, she crumpled like discarded clothes, and her head lolled as her porcelain cheek began to pitch to the muddy ground. A gentle hand caught her like china. So what have I changed? Well, we did have a simile before, which was a lovely one. She crumbled like dust, with its illusion of death there, works brilliantly. But then we've got the problem of the dust falling in a tangled heap. Well, dust can't tangle, and so it doesn't work. I could have dust in a heap, could have kept that, but I wanted this idea of something with life taken from it. The dust comes later, so I've got the idea of her being discarded like clothes. That gives us an image, if you like, of a lifeless body. It also gives us a very slight suggestion of a sexual motive for the killing. So I've kept it like that. Um, later on, our teacher is going to have her head battered to a pulp, and I've got to change that, as I'll show you later. And so instead, I'm treating her a bit more like a doll. So her head lolled as her porcelain cheek began to pitch. And the reason I've got her as a doll here is because that's what would have had a porcelain cheek. You can get dolls built this way. And then I've added the extra simile. A gentle hand caught her like china, because again, china links with porcelain, but it also suggests how easy she is to damage and smash. And once again, I really like contrast, so I've introduced our killer as appearing to save her here with a gentle hand while she's falling, and then he'll kill her. I got rid of hidden from view because it wasn't really necessary to our story. And now we come to the end. Hours later, she would be found, soiled and crumpled, like a fallen glove, her scarf missing, and her eyes glazed with fireworks from the fair. So what have I changed in the ending here? Well, a simple change with a scarf missing is slightly clumsy, because you can't be with a scarf if the scarf's not there. So I've just changed that to her scarf missing. I've had to get rid of this dramatic image of her head battered to a pulp. It does work as a piece of drama, but it doesn't work with our beginning, because in the beginning he was so excited about keeping his knife. And so therefore the modus operandi, the method of killing, doesn't work. Why would you batter someone's head in if you're thinking about using the knife to kill them? So I've got rid of that. And also it doesn't work with the doll-like image that I've introduced. Instead, I've glazed her eyes with fireworks from the fair. I love metaphor. You should know that metaphor is more powerful than simile, because it says something is something else. It's much more direct. So I really love metaphor. It also allows me to introduce contrast and juxtaposition again. So her eyes are glazed as china gets glazed and porcelain gets glazed. So it fits thematically with what I've written before. But we also get the idea of a dead stare there. And I've got the fireworks from the fair, which are wonderful, exciting things, which reflects her feeling of being out in the fair. But of course, that's the irony. It's that excitement that's led to her death. And finally, you'll know that I love these fricative Fs, which are quite hostile. So even though the words themselves sound quite soft, because you bare your teeth when you make this sound, fireworks from fair, there's also that element of anger. So we've got the gentleness contrasted with anger, which of course went throughout this whole story. So I hope you can see the reasons for my making the changes. And when you sit back, having done this, you're not really saying to yourself, have I made the story better empirically? Would everybody agree that my story is better than the original? That's not the point. The point is you're now thinking like a writer. You're crafting like a writer. And yes, some of your choices won't be as good. You'll change the wrong stuff. But others will be better. And gradually you'll get better and better at writing. So choose the best writing in your class. Get your teacher to type it up. And all of you then sit down and try and rework it and make it better. It really is one of the best ways of becoming a really skilled writer. So good luck with your revision, and I hope you take to writing, really enjoy it, because it's a skill that will give you pleasure for life. Don't forget to subscribe. Goodbye.